Good evening. I'm Rosemary Pena, Adjunct Professor of German Studies at UBC Vancouver and President of the Black German Heritage and Research Association. Dr. Emily Fraser Rath and I welcome you once again to the 14th event in our BGHRA's All Black Lives Matter series and the 10th hosted in collaboration with Davidson College. Tonight, we welcome Beatrice and Lauren Cox. When I viewed Lauren's powerful TEDx performance for the first time, I was moved to tears. I especially appreciate the intergenerational and interrelational aspects in her creative storytelling, and am delighted that we have both mother and daughter here with us this evening. We are immensely grateful to Davidson College for allowing these important conversations to take place. Each in their own way is making an important contribution to discourses within and beyond academia. Every recording is a precious gift, and in addition to our media archive, and tonight's discussion will be no exception. So now I'll ask Emily if she'd be so kind as to formally acknowledge our sponsors and introduce our special guests and let the conversation commence. Emily?
Thank you, Rosemary. My name is Emily Fraser Rath, and I'm a visiting assistant professor of German studies at Davidson College, located just north of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also the executive director of the BGHRA Institute. Today, I have the privilege of introducing Lauren and Beatrice Cox. This talk is made possible by the Davidson Arts Across the Curriculum Enrichment Fund, which, quote, supports creative endeavors that seek either to enrich the classroom experience by integrating the work of visiting artists or to enhance the student experience through travel to museums, theater performances, literary talks, and more. My deepest thanks to Sherry Nelson, Director of Davidson Arts and Creative Engagement, for her support. And as always, to our German Studies Department Program Administrator, Meg Sawicki, whose logistical support has been absolutely invaluable this semester and beyond. Our conversation with Lauren and Beatrice today is also the next installment of the BGHRA, or Black German Heritage and Research Association's All Black Lives Matter series. Beginning in the spring of 2021, the BGHRA has invited scholars, activists, and artists whose work and lives intersect with, influence, shape, and inform Black German studies to share their experiences and stories with the BGHR community and beyond. Several of our most recent videos include conversation between guests and students in Dr. Pena and my co-taught class at Davidson College entitled Black German Art and Resistance. All of the videos in the series, including this conversation tonight, are available on the YouTube channel entitled Black Germans, which I'll link to in a moment. I'll also link to our course syllabus in the chat, so you can see what we've been up to. It is a true honor to introduce Lauren and Beatrice this evening. Lauren Cox is currently a lecturer in jazz dance at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, where her research and embodied curriculum focuses on how socio-political and cultural events shape dance history in New World African communities across the Americas, particularly following the many influencers of jazz music and dance. Her dance training is the sum of her travels ranging from rhythmic gymnastics to jazz and Haitian cultural dances, African American social dances, hip hop, samba, modern, contemporary improvisation, singing, and acting. She holds a BA in sociology from San Francisco State University and speaks fluent Portuguese. Beatrice Cox, her mother, whose childhood is featured in the TEDx performance, we hope that you all got a chance to see. We'll also link to that in the chat in case you want to revisit it or see it for the first time following the talk, is a historic archaeologist and photojournalist born in Munich, Germany, and raised in Flint, Michigan. She holds a BA in fashion merchandising and retailing from Western Michigan University, a BA in anthropology, an MA in cultural resources management from Sonoma State University in California. I'll stop there with formal introductions, as I think it's really important that Beatrice and Lauren have the opportunity to introduce themselves in their own words as well. But it is with deep and warmest gratitude that I welcome you both this evening for a conversation. And thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise in your work with us tonight. So I'll turn it over to Lauren and Beatrice to introduce themselves and to also begin our conversation tonight talking about the process, the work, and more.
Yeah, hello, North Carolina. So my name is Lauren Cox. I just moved to Western Massachusetts after 10 years in New York as a professional dancer and choreographer and creator, and just tried everything my little child wanted, my inner Lauren wanted, inner little Lauren wanted, and I'm really blessed to have joined the incredible faculty at UMass Amherst in the dance department who are working to reconfigure dance curriculum to be more diverse, more inclusive, and all of the things that I feel that I've been working towards my entire life when it comes to figuring out what this world is and how we fit in it, how I fit in it, and very blessed for that. I don't know how else to introduce myself, so I'm going to stop right there and hand it over to my wonderful mother here.
Oh, thank you.
We should have introduced each other. I feel like that would have
Oh, well, go ahead. Yeah, because I could say you're living my best life. Well, so yes, I don't even know where to start. I had a long journey, and I've come out the other side pretty good, I think. And I currently live in Sonoma County in a little town called Sebastopol, and I've been here for about a little over 10 years. And that, I think this is where I'm gonna anchor myself. However, I do love to travel, and I'm still traveling, but I started off, I just recently, I am an archaeologist, and I've been an archaeologist for, I think the last 15 years. And it sort of was being an archaeologist was like a dream come true, because it sort of was a culmination of everything I wanted to know about everyone, and especially myself. Where is it that I fit in? And archaeology sort of gave me that that detective thing that I love to do, snoop and research and see what's in those dresser drawers and the trunks that I saw as a child. And so it was perfect. And through archaeology, I learned the skills of research and documentation and writing technical documents and looking for exactly what I need. So I have, I'll leave it there, because everything that happened before this time that I'm in now is, I would say that if you watch the TEDx talk that Lauren produced, that you can sort of see where the beginnings were. And I could, if anyone was interested, I could enhance that story for sure. And please ask any questions that you would like. I'm very happy to answer.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just talk about the work a little bit and tell you how it kind of came to me. And I don't think that actually it came to me, it just is me, right? Through way of my mother and my grandmother and this incredible story that I grew up listening to and dreaming about and witnessing. Um, and it was just in me, and I feel like I was just looking for a way to share it with the world. We had a few iterations of it before this TEDx opportunity came through, and this just happened to be the perfect place to share that story. And I was just looking for that perfect platform, a platform where they wouldn't use it for their own good or use it for their own gain, where it would be appreciated in perpetuity. And I'm really grateful for the team at TEDx Asbury Park to have put it on such a strong and able platform that it would reach, platforms like this. This is the dream, because you can
Yeah.
easily commodify a story like this. So, yeah.
I just wanted to comment on that because during the production of that, I was so nervous. It's a very, very deep and strong story, and very personal. And even though I knew I wanted it to be told in a way, but it was still scary. And I remember telling Lauren, please query the family, and because I'm ready to release it. And I think that the night it happened, I was so proud, for one, but it was a release. It was like something off of my shoulders. And also to the journey from Germany to here. That was that in itself sort of set the stage, for my life, and how and to where I am today. But that initial thing was very, very tough on me. But I remember walking into the area, Lauren, where everyone was sitting after program, and they were all sitting around the table, and they were all around you. And I was like, thank you. No one's no one's coming to me and saying, oh, I'm so sorry, or oh, I was just so proud. And I know people said, you're the mom, and yes, I was, and I am. But it was wonderful. I'm so grateful that it was like a release, and a new me came forth after that, for sure. Yeah.
Such a beautiful tribute to family and to history and all things. Could you both speak to how it developed and how it came to be, and to incorporate one of our students' questions into this question? How did you choose to incorporate spoken word into dance, and what were the challenges of this sort of multimodal, multimedia sort of performance that developed?
Hmm. Yeah, I had a couple of inspirations besides the story. I obviously did a lot of research on TED Talks, the different types of TED Talks, and with emphasis on entertainment. And I'm always really struck by the work of Bill T. Jones, who works out of New York and is, just an incredible voice within the uh, queer, Black, human dance, modern dance community. And he always incorporates text with movement and pushes time and really manipulates all of the elements in beautiful ways that I always come out completely changed from. And I watched his TED Talk, and I believe it was called The Circle in the Square. And just the way that he utilized all of these different elements helped with the formation of this. I think my first art was poetry, and I had a wonderful teacher in this hippie elementary school that my mother put me in. That was the best thing ever. I had a wonderful teacher named Helena Jones who taught us everything through the lens of poetry, and I mean everything. And that was from kindergarten through third grade. And then, dance became my voice once I went to public school. Dance became my voice and was a way for me to yell at the world without, I don't know, losing face. and then the multimedia was just this other element that really needed to happen in order to ground the entire story, in order to tell you, no, this is real. And so all of these different elements went into play. And I talked to one of my mentors, Rhapsody James, who's an incredible choreographer out in LA, from New York to LA. The queen of street jazz. And she really helped me in terms of putting together a performance and understanding each layer as something to add to the story, and just to kind of bring all these different dimensions together. The text was the hardest thing, but it just, it all flowed. It was hard. It was the hardest thing that I've ever done. Hardest thing that I've ever squeezed out of a brain cell. And, it's just such a huge story to narrow it down, into this 10-minute TED Talk was overwhelming. And I'm just really happy that I could carry that weight from my mom and to help her release it.
Lauren, your mom mentioned that she asked you before you presented or before you completed the performance to query your family members. I wonder what that was like for you, and what were their responses, and what has their responses been since seeing the performance? And I'd really love your mom to speak a little bit more about how involved or not she was in the making, and to elaborate a little bit more about that release and burden that was removed after she had the opportunity to view it.
Yeah, the family. I interviewed all of the siblings, the living siblings, my mother, and which are just two, my aunt and uncle. And I interviewed them about this story and about what it was like growing up, in Flint, Michigan. And they didn't come over, with my mom. They were born in Flint, Michigan, to a different father. And so they had a completely different story, which I just found fascinating, because it seemed that this story that I told, in their story, all the characters were kind of mixed up, right? Like my mom's hero was their villain. My mom's villain was their hero, per se. And it just really was an interesting take on family and how everyone experiences something different within, after this horrible disaster that happened in that family, how the residual effects just kind of, birthed different stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that brought to light for me that fact. Yeah, that of course they would have a different story. It was my story. It was I was surprised, but then I understand, and over the years, that it's since then I understand. I mean, I understand so much more, that that it was my experience, that and my experience, um, I was so, as I got older, I was so worried about how my experience affected them as they were growing up, right? But and it's like you said, it's all different, and uh, it was, although we're siblings, then we have there was definitely a separation because of my father and who he was. And well, whom of course, as everyone knows, that I didn't get to um know. So yeah, really different household. Very, very interesting
You
growing
had
up.
another sibling though that was born immediately after.
Yes,
Okay, and so
yes,
that
yes,
sibling would be your whole sibling.
yes. And she passed away
Oh,
a few years back. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because I'm sure her story would have been again.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think about her a lot. Yeah, it was, unless we get into some psychology here and I have a couch to lay on. I don't think I want to go into it, but I can look back on all of that now, and I can see all the different parts and the places and the times, the good times and the difficult times. And it's because I'm an anthropologist, because I can now put these things um, in categories, or at least organize them where I can understand them, uh and forgive my mother, forgive my stepdad, forgive my sister, but just a forgiving thing, and heal to become the person that I am. So that TED Talk did all of that for me. And so it was, that's how, when you talk about, releasing, that's what it did. It just opened my eyes wide, and it made everything okay, in a way. It was like, okay, here I am, I made it, and everything's good. And, I've, you know,
Do you anticipate writing your story in a memoir, or is there something else, a collaborative project on the agenda with you and
yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah, how about that? Yeah, I just joined a memoir writing um, class with a group of 15 women who have all different stories to tell. And so each week we meet, and each week we hear a story, and I'm learning to write. So I will have a nice little book for Lauren and my son Philip.
And for us.
And for, yes, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I promise. Yeah, I wrote
Lauren,
the
I'll have
first
you,
little story today.
yeah, Lauren, I'll ask you to hold her to that for us. And
Oh,
what's
yeah.
next on your agenda?
Oh, I suppose getting used to this Western Massachusetts academia life here. Um, I work with an international project called Spaces, and I'm a co-creator of this lovely storytelling event, immersive storytelling event, where we travel to different cities and immerse ourselves in the culture and with the people, and we mount a show around their stories in the community and use the dancers and the choreographers within the community to create just a wonderful show. We just finished in Oakland, California, and in Saint Denis, France. And we've been in conversation with the island, with artists on Ilha de Mozambique in Mozambique. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing where that project takes me. And then, yeah, just academia, I'm trying to figure out what's what, and writing grants to research jazz more and the origins of jazz from Haiti. to now, all of the influences.
Well, in terms of Black German studies,
Oh yeah.
where we are situating this conversation today, um, when did you come to be aware of the field, and what are your thoughts about the field and the contribution that you're making to the field?
Yeah.
And I see that your interests are in so many different areas. Do you plan on working with your story or with your family's story further?
Yeah, I think that's the only that's what I know and how I know to study and to put forth and to create from, right, is my story. And so I this Black German community is so new to me.
Mhm.
And I, entered in UMass here as a professor, and just and am trying to dig in as much as possible. And I came across Kavina King and all of the amazing work that the library is doing here, and it opened my world. I didn't know much beyond this story and beyond the possible other stories that are around, in the United States and beyond. I didn't know. I didn't know. And so this is all such a wonderful surprise. And I'm so happy to have known, because I think also with this story, I've had to check in and be like, oh, I'm Black German. That's my identity in some ways. And I think for so long, I've been just trying to convince everybody that I'm just American, period, because everyone looks at me and they see the world and they think I'm from wherever they're from, right? So to have that identity is new. I think now, I always just thought of my mother and my uncles and my aunts, as that,
And how
and
does
so
that feel to you? And I thank you for that, because that this is, I will say, 89% of why we exist as an organization, because we are concerned about that.
Mhm,
So
mhm, mhm,
I would ask, and also to you, Beatrice, what does it
mhm.
mean to you to know that you are a part of a community?
Um, it's wonderful because I I I wish that my mother had this kind of a community. I mean, we had a community, but this is different. And I remember my mother my mother was in just such pain. I think for a long, long time, but because I think her German heritage was something that she was missing. But at that time, she couldn't figure out, she coming out of Germany when she did, I remember asking her one time, why didn't we just go back, to Germany? And she said, what am I supposed to do with Black children in Germany at that time? And so she did what she could hear, and she spoke English with a Ebonic accent, Ebonic and German accent. And I mean, uh, but I think that the community that she provided us with, traveling, and I don't know where she found the community, but there were always German families like us. There was always a German woman and an African American father, and in the family, and we'd go to Canada and around Michigan to visit these people, and they became friends of ours, and we grew up with them as children. And um, so I think that at some point it would have been nice for her to know even more, because after she passed away, I found out that there was a group of people that met, including German women that met on a regular basis, um, that were associated with the airplane crash.
Mm.
And I think that she would have really benefited from that. I know reading it, it, it helped me. Everything that I've gone through, everything that I remember her going through, how we pass it on and things get better. And then, so I try to just, I just make it better and try to do what I can and to pass it on to my children to help them along, as being, I know what it's like to be me in a school that, whatever school it is, it doesn't matter. And for me, an all black school, which is what I went to, an elementary all black, and then to an all white school. And I think at that point, that's when about when they force integrated the schools, right? And so it was it's just knowing that you have some people that you can talk to and to be there and who are experiencing and similar things or different, but just have that same camaraderie. I mean, I totally identified with the Black community because I lived in the Black community, but I knew I was different. And I didn't really know that my mother was white until somebody told me. And I didn't know I was different until somebody pulled my hair and said, or I didn't know, I didn't know I was different. You don't when you're kids.
Did you keep your language? Did you?
Well, no, I kept a lot of curse words because that's what my mother's. But yes, when I had the opportunity to go back to Germany, it was wonderful. We lived there for 4 years, and while my husband was in the military, and so I got to see the people who took care of me and really treasured me when I was very small. And so I learned German again. I was very fluent. I did know a little bit because my mom, she spoke very little, but she did. And but going over there, it just flowed and I was able to learn it really well. And of course, that's been so many years ago now. And now that I'm back, it's just, I don't speak it. So I've lost it, but I can understand. I'm sure I can pick it up again. And I do understand it when it's spoken for the most part. And yeah, so I can, and we have we've always had German traditions in the house, and at Christmas time and other times. And so I definitely know, I bet we definitely had both in the house.
What was that like for you, Lauren, growing up with both traditions?
Yeah, I don't think I thought twice about it really. I remember just really good food. My grandmother could cook. And now looking back on it, realizing what these dishes were that she learned how to cook they were kind of wartime German foods, and they were mixed with, Black cuisine and soul food. So we got this mix, and I don't know that I ever thought it was not normal. It was just really good. And
German food, huh?
yeah, it was really, really good. And and so I remember the food. I remember when the Berlin Wall came down and my mom got a piece of it and put it in our living room. And I remember looking at that a lot and contemplating our history and the division of that, horrible wall and all of these different things. I remember figurines. Little snapshots from childhood that I don't think I ever, until very recently, realized how special that they were. Um, I went to Berlin, I think 12, 13 years ago to stay with some friends, and to go there and to hear the language and to be in Germany, felt foreign in a lot of ways and felt cathartic in other ways. Just because of the food, it's the food for me. That's my connection to Germany. you know, that's my connection. Is just that's what my grandmother would do. She would cook, and that's where I feel most solace in my life now is cooking.
Do you still have family members in Germany that you visit, or?
I don't.
We have a aunt, you have an aunt in North Carolina. And yeah, which I visited. That's your great aunt, right? And so yeah, Auntie Vivey. She's
Yeah.
in she's in North Carolina and outside of Raleigh, and she's a total German woman, and I love her to death. And we have actually we have I have another aunt that's in Germany, and then I'm I'm sure there are other folks over there that I don't know about. Because my mother and well, her mother lived during the war, and was very, things got lost, stories got lost, stories weren't told, um, stories they didn't want to tell, and that actually goes for both sides. That actually goes from, our African American heritage as well, from, my grandmother. It just was sort of always, but oh yeah, but Lauren and I are writing everything down now, so it will move forward.
Lauren, are you an only child?
No, I was raised with a little brother. I have an older brother as well, but I have a little brother named Philip who not so much younger, about a year and a half younger than me, and he lives in LA.
I was really, really moved by well, in the beginning, you were just speaking, right? And the dancers were moving. I was really moved by the point in which you joined the dance,
Mm,
and especially when it was the three women, the three
mm.
generations. That meant a lot to me.
Mm.
And I wonder what that means to you when you look at it. I mean, obviously, that's not um, Beatrice or Elsa, it's the dancers, but they're representative of the three of you. And I wonder what that felt like for you, Lauren, and to be present in that moment, and then again in viewing it later on.
Mm. I think the more profound um, viewing of it came afterwards. At that point, it was just a well-oiled machine, and thank goodness because we had some bloopers in there that didn't make it, not due to us, but due to the technical side of things. So I was just in it 100%. I think what was really powerful are the dancers that came forth to stand in the positions. Gabby, who played my mother, is half South African and half Canadian. She is also mixed. And so she found a similar story there. And Dana Wiener, who plays my grandmother, is an incredible, I mean, she's only like 21, 20. She was exactly the age that my grandmother was. And she is of Jewish heritage. And so I thought that was a really interesting, take on things, being that my grandmother grew up you know, in Nazi Germany. And so she was channeling my grandmother. They were all there. And I think actually my grandmother is the one that kind of messed with the technical things. I was sitting there thinking, like, is that you? Okay. But I think, it's been a profound you know, journey to just see it now again and again, and to see that Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer is not so, it's not so near and dear to me because I wasn't raised Catholic, but I know it was to my mother. So it's this ritual of going to a graveyard for me that really sits probably paramount to the rest of the experience and really
Mhm.
reflects a human experience.
Mhm.
And I wonder how doing this work brought you in, I would say, communication with your grandfather, Lauren, someone who obviously you didn't have a chance to meet,
Yeah.
but someone who is obviously a big presence in your family, and what that meant to you to bring him, someone you've never met, to life.
Yeah, I feel a very strong connection to, I call him Baba Eugene. I don't know if I've ever told my mom that, but I call him Baba Eugene. Baba is from the Yoruba culture, which is the faith that I am, that I practice. And he loves that name. I can tell you every time I sit, he's on my ancestor altar, and I have him as a young man before he went to the war, and I have him, as a picture sitting beside my grandmother, and then as a family with my mom, and I have all of these different pictures to just see these different points in his life. Still, it was a short life, but it was so impactful, and he still lived fully in each moment, it would seem. And I'm just really grateful for him. I'm grateful for his courage. I'm grateful um, for his humility. And I still love him so much, even though I never got to meet him. I still feel a very, very strong connection to him. I still feel he's here.
Emily, do we have some audience questions that we should start to entertain?
One, yes. Oh, here we go. Well, we've touched on the idea of, Beatrice, once your mother moved to Flint, and Eileen asks how much or how little Germany and German culture played in your life, but also in your mother's life. We've touched on that a bit,
Mhm.
but maybe you can
Mhm.
elaborate a bit. And then
Okay.
I'll just give you another one and let you keep talking. So this is from Mel Curry in the chat. Have you read works by Afro-Deutsche, such as Hans Massaquoy's autobiography, which I'm not going to read the title of, and Jennifer Ortega's Amon, Mein Großvater hätte mich erschossen? How many other members of your family still make an effort to cultivate a connection to the German language?
Mhm. No, I have not read any of that. And to make a connection, um, I think that I'm the only one actively trying to make a connection. But all the cousins and others have traveled and are very well aware of our ancestry and pay homage to it all the time. And so maybe I'm not the only active, but I think that we all know the heritage. Um, but I'm sorry, what was the first question?
About how much influence Germany and German language, German culture, you spoke about food a bit, or Lauren did, played a role in your childhood.
Very, I think my mom did the best she could, and I think that we learned a lot of German when we were younger, and I think it was a big role when we were younger with the holidays and um, the games and the music. My mother loved opera, and she loved just classical music, and so also I don't know if all Germans are this way, but she was a total clean freak. So we were, we had to, what we did on Saturday morning. She'd turn on the classical music and that was out of the bed. But I think I think all my life it's played a big role. In all my life she spoke German, and I think later on she I think she got a little jealous because I remember her saying to me one time, it's just everything is just African American, black this, black. Where's your German? Why don't you? I'm going, oh, you okay? You know, but I was, raised in, black neighborhoods, black schools. Um, I think that I've always identified as black. I got into college, my Western Michigan, the affirmative action. I was, and that was the first time that I took Black history classes in college. I've always identified with knowing that I was different and also paying homage to my mother and my heritage always. But it just felt during that time there wasn't room to be. You had to choose. I had to choose outside of the house. I had to choose. And yeah.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to add, I think our family really reflects the first generation immigrant experience in a lot of ways, in the idea of trying to assimilate, and also just trying to oh gosh, what do I want to say? It just left me. And also to deal from great tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
That tragedy really, really pierced our family.
It did. Mm-hmm.
It pierced that generation, that next generation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that there is still, we're still picking up the pieces. And so I hope that, telling this story, I hope that if another TED Talk comes around, I could tell it from my aunt's perspective and from my uncle's perspective. It's been hard. So it is, that is the connection, that I think perhaps would all bring us together.
It's been hard, hasn't it? It really has, but tell what Omi said to you before she passed away.
Oh, I was at her. Well, I think that's what the beginning of the TED Talk says, is just keep going.
Yeah.
And that's what she just said, and that's what she embodied. She kept going, and she kept going to the fact where she would change apartments every year, because she was in unrest in that way. So it was just this nature that she had that would push us
You got
forward.
the Edelweiss tattoo?
I do. I have it on my back. Me and my mother got it in Bolivia. We traveled together to Machu Picchu, and on the way in La Paz, we got this tattoo. So
I actually have a question about, I have a question about the tattoo, but also about sort of the role that the body plays in both of your lives. So Beatrice as a model and Lauren as a dancer, and also obviously tattooing of the body and that sort of thing. I know that in our audience we have several people who come from the German studies perspective, and fewer people, but though they're here, who come from the dance perspective. And I think not so often do these two worlds collide, unfortunately, because I think there's obviously so much richness there. But maybe, Lauren, you could talk a little bit about sort of the role of the body in your work, and both of you in your lives.
It's an amazing question. I think what my mind first goes to is my grandmother's body, and in observing her body, as it was getting older and seeing her experience reflected in the way that her body was. You know, she was very heavy, very hunched over, very, you know, kind of looked up every once in a while. And at least that's how I remember her. She had the softest cheeks in the world. I would bury my face in them. And I think that I really have been transformed by that experience, by watching this body and how it ages with grief and with time and with, you know, a lot of joy. She had a lot of joy as well. And wanting to, I suppose, heal it and correct it within myself. I think that is why I danced, actually, you know, in the beginning, besides the voice, was to heal and correct my body because I came out very contorted. So um, dance has helped me do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure, Mom, if you have anything you want to say about the body in this piece of work. I think, I'm sorry, I guess I do have a little bit more thoughts on it, but each character has a different movement language, and that's what we really, really worked with each character, right? We have Eugene being, you know, this quintessential African American man who's that generation that came up from Mississippi to work in the shops, but ends up in the military as a lifetime military man, right? And who was put possibly in the front lines and whose body was used, you know, over and over again, and then whose body disappears, you know, and so that journey needed to be hashed out. His movement is very different than the other ones, than my mom, who is this mix of, you know, both. And so I tried to make her movement grounded and contemporary, to reflect her new American experience. With my grandmother, it's more classical, well, as classical as I can go. I'm not a ballerina, but it is more classical, is more pulled up. And actually, in researching the history of jazz in Germany, my grandmother was a dancer, you know, she met him as a dancer. We have a picture to prove it. And I wish I would have put that picture. I didn't have it at the time, and I didn't have that knowledge at the time, but we have since found out that she was a dancer and that she was probably dancing jazz, you know? So there was already this conversation with movement in her. And I wish I'd gotten her to dance when she was here. But she saw me a few times, so
Yeah,
that was good.
she did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see. My movement, my expression through modeling came, I don't know. I think it was, I was seeking to find me, you know, and to to also to love who I am and who I was then, and to just to be a confident, to be confident about that, and to have self-esteem. I really had low self-esteem during that time. And so I think I don't, you know, I fell into modeling, you know, of course, all the relatives were, I was sort of the odd person out. And so I got a lot of attention in one way and then not in the other ways. But I just decided that very early that modeling was going to, I felt good. It just felt like I needed it to find that confidence enough to be present in front of people. I was a very shy person. I wouldn't dance. I wouldn't go to dances. I wouldn't, you know, I just shy away from conversations. And I was an introvert at that time. And so I think the modeling, I started, I think it was in Wendy Ward elementary school or something, standing in the window, and then, but on from there, and then, and it became, for me, it was because I had went to school for fashion merchandising and retailing. For me, it was a business. And so even though I got jobs, and because of the way I looked, I could still, I managed it like a business. So I didn't get caught up in the way I looked. I just, even though I needed that confirmation, it helped me to like, go, okay, you are who you are, you look the way you do, and you get the attention because you look that way. You get negative attention and you get positive attention. So what, you got to deal with it. So that's how I dealt with it. And it was it was great. And I met a model friend of mine recently after years of nuts of since the beginning. Her name is Frederica Newton. She was she left modeling and became Huey P. Newton's wife of the Black Panthers. And so I met her in Oakland when Lauren did her show. She was a storyteller. And she said, you used to walk into those interviews and you didn't even care. You looked like you didn't care if you got it or not. And I really, didn't, because my attitude was they're going to like me or they're not. And I had gotten that all my life. Either you're it or you're not, so that was what it did for me, that career. And I'm still, even throughout my life, even after that, and speaking and now speaking in another language as, as a college student, then as an archaeologist, and those transitions are easier to come by, because then, I know sooner or later I'll learn it, so I'm still shy about speaking in front of people though. And I'm still shy about the way I look too, huh, Lauren? Just like,
well, we appreciate you telling your story here.
I'm very, yes, honesty is the best policy.
I want to open it up to anyone else who might have a question in the audience to please feel free to message us individually or via the Q&A function or via chat. We have just a little bit longer. I'll take this moment to ask another question that came from one of our students. So Lauren, this is for you. Could you speak about the different sort of dance influences that that you pulled into both this work, but in general, your work? You've talked a bit about jazz and not classical, but maybe you could talk a little bit about your background, your training, and these influences.
Yeah. My training starts with rhythmic gymnastics as a mover and as a dancer, which is very much contortion and dance and apparatus. It's a weird sport. And at that time, there was only 3 Black rhythmic gymnasts in the entire country. And then after that, I wanted to find my drum, and I feel like I've been on a search for my drum ever since, being in that very heavily European background. That was kind of exalted over, or placed on a pedestal. I wanted to find something else and find that drum. And so I studied hip hop in Oakland for a good 6-7 years. And then I moved to Brazil and studied samba and Portuguese and life. I just was free for a year. And then I came back and realized that I needed to kind of, do this dance thing for real, and went to New York and just did as much as I possibly could. I've done everything from Buto dance, which is an incredible art from Japan, to, that downtown modern to commercial, on, television and screens and all of that stuff. And so with all of that, I've always kind of used the classroom to digest my trainings and my experiences in the dance world. I'm not sure what my style is. In fact, I'm still trying to find that, within jazz, especially because jazz is so many things and has been so many things throughout history, is that I want to be some kind of combination of all of that and to be able to pull from any old style and to find a voice within it, or to find the voices and try them on. And so with this piece though in particular, I was just discovering my voice as a jazz teacher. And so my approach comes from the mediums of hip hop, rhythmic gymnastics, and contemporary, which is a very broad, definition of dance. There's like, I don't know if anybody knows the definition of contemporary dance, but it is something that resembles ballet in this new world. And so it just became this mixture. And really with this, like I said before, was just the different voices of this piece needed to be, reflected in the choices of movement. And so, my grandmother was a bit more classical, but also rigid, because she, her body would show that she was, in pain or something. I don't want to put so much all these stories on my grandmother. There's still room for her in there. These she's multidimensional. But I suppose somehow to show that, to serve this story, right? I had to serve this story very strategically. So in this rendition of her story, she is constantly getting smaller and smaller as the story goes on, and you can see it. And so it had to reflect, and we needed to find these moments of closing that led her finally into her final movement, where she's just kind of milling about. And so the trajectory of that movement was really important. And yeah, I don't know if I answered that question, or I think I talked already about the other explorations that we did. And I don't think it was done actually. I think that we could have dug more into my grandfather, to Eugene's movement. I think that now, with my knowledge of jazz now, and what he was seeing and experiencing, I know a lot more about the history of and what was happening in Flint, Michigan at that time, pre-war. So I would have brought something, a little bit closer to that movement language in there. And with my mom, I'm going to stick by that one and say contemporary was a good choice, because she's a mix. And so she needed to reflect the grounded nature and also the unsettledness of my grandmother. Yeah, dance has been a journey. Never thought I would get it. Never thought it would take me to a TED Talk. Never thought it would get me to academia. Never thought about anything. I was just simply curious and wanting to fix my body.
Question about your grandmother and your family. You mentioned that she was Catholic and that you are practicing the Yoruba faith. But what I'd like to know is, what role did faith play in your grandmother's life, in terms of her journey, and in your mother's life? It, different faiths, obviously, but what role did that play in terms of the strength necessary to overcome all of the challenges that you faced?
I wonder if, I guess this is like a question, a relay question to my mother, but I wonder if it was in the routine of going to church every Sunday. I wonder if these routines helped her. I wonder if, her faith.
I think it helped her stay
Yeah, it
connected.
yeah.
connected to Germany, connected to that home because they were, yeah. I mean, she, yeah, she was a devout Catholic, and we went to, went to church every Sunday, and we were the three, there were the four of us, the four siblings, we all went to church, to the Catholic Church until we didn't, until, um, yeah, I think it was when for me anyway, I realized that my friends were going to a different church, and the church I was going to um, was not a Black church. So and I never, and I think I went once or twice to in my youth. But the thing that my mother all remained a Catholic, and we always took her to church on New Year, on Christmas Eve. That's when she wanted to go. But we actually stopped going to church, I think, when we became teenagers, because we were impossible. I could just say that. we were, we were, we were questioning it a lot more at that point. We began questioning, the catechism at first. We did. In Flint, in the Black community that we lived, we had it was a Catholic church, and it was with a Black priest and all Black congregation. And but on Wednesdays when we went to catechism, the nuns were white, and they were mean. So my church, my experience with church was, off and on. But I think that it's been a long time since I've had had the church, or have had any faith in any one church, until a couple years ago when I took a IFA 101 course, of the Yoruba faith, and I seem to relate to that more than I have any other religion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have time for maybe one more question before we close. Is there something from our audience, or would you like to have closing comments?
Really grateful for this community to invite us in, and to help us learn more about ourselves and about the community that is out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just, I don't know what we've been doing here.
We've missed out.
We've been missing this, and
Yes.
so what you're doing with your organization is so important. It's so validating and so wonderful to be able to define this unique experience that we've had and haven't been able to quite put our fingers on, or at least I should be speaking just for myself. And it's very healing. I can, it's a complicated history. It's a complicated history.
Mm-hmm. It is. I agree with you, Lauren.
Yeah.
And I thank you for saying that, because it's why I get up in the morning and do what I do. So I just feel validated that
Mm-hmm.
what I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing is indeed useful and
Mm-hmm.
hopefully healing in some
Mm-hmm.
way.
I agree.
So, and of course, this is just the beginning of the conversation for us, right? We will be in contact again very soon.
Mm.
So many thanks now to Beatrice and Lauren Cox for joining us in conversation this evening. Thank you, as always, to Dr. Emily Frazier Rath and our sponsors at Davidson College. Please visit our website at bghra.org and to follow us on Eventbrite, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to learn more about futures events in our All Black Lives Matter series. On this coming Thursday, November 17th, we invite you to join us in screening the documentary film Becoming Black and in conversation with director Enos Johnson Spain. For more information about this event, go to tinyurl.com/becomingblack. Our YouTube channel hosts recordings from all of the earlier episodes in this series and from our 4 international conferences. Mark your calendars for February 17th to the 20th, 2022, when we will host the 5th BGHRA conference virtually in partnership with Africana Studies at Rutgers University, Camden. We hope that you've been as enriched by tonight's conversation as we have, and we look forward to welcoming you again. Until next time, we thank you for your time and attention. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.